Welcome back, everyone. I am the Depressed Dior, and this is Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 10. So, this is still week 1. I'm just still trying to see where I'm at with this new box, and I can already tell there's some issues with it, which I'll go into a little bit later. For right now, I'm going up against Tank Force. As the name implies, he has tanks. He has 4 tanks. Let's see, Vargas. Oh, correction. Technically, he has 5 tanks? 5 characters that can guard, at least. Yeah, 5 tanks. So yeah, the name fits the box rather well. Right off the bat, I banned Rosen Seal, as always, because I want to try to take advantage of the whole AoE thing. The only other besides the vast amount of tanks, the rest of it seems to be mostly just strikers. The only assassin is Cherry. The rest is pretty much just AoEs or just... Yeah, it seems to be designed to be just kind of a slow tank rollout type thing, which I don't see very often anymore. Anyway, they went and banned my Rosen Seal. I don't know why. So they opened with Liana first. Oh yeah, I guess one thing to also note, they only had 3 healers, so when I actually banned Rosen Seal, they had to pick a healer, else I was going to ban the rest of them. So that actually worked out pretty well. At this point, I go ahead and got rid of Juggler and Luna. Luna, of course, has that magic aura that could be the magic reduction aura, which is pretty strong. It's like 30%. And then Juggler, of course, has that passive heal every time he gets hit that heals the rest of the party. So I take Sissy White. Why did I take Sissy White? Oh right, if Rosen Seal gets banned, I only have 2 healers at this point. That's the situation. Yeah, I end up being stuck with Lycoris and Sissy White. So yeah, I took Sissy White. It does technically get me a physical tank if I need one in the pinch. And I've been trying to stick with Sissy White because honestly the currency thing's actually pretty good. But it's not been working out as well as I hoped with this particular box, unfortunately. They banned my long range and AoE. They picked Bozel right off the bat. I went ahead and start banning some of their tanks. So this picking Hilda and Christiane made it so all the remaining tanks are physical only. So magical, they can't do anything against magic. It also got rid of any auras that reduced range damage. Went ahead and grabbed Iron Chancellor. I'm honestly a pretty big fan of Iron Chancellor. She's kind of like Yulia Deedlit, but like far more flexible and usable. She actually has a deceptively long range, even though she's only a base 3 movement character. She can move an extra 3 steps with her 1 cost skill, and of course she can up her movement to 5 with her formation stuff. So, and then she has 2 range, so she effectively has about a 10 range, almost majority of the time. In any case, my opponent went ahead and banned one of my tanks and then my AoE. Grabs Nathaniel. So at this point I got rid of Sherry and Tensei Jessica. I definitely really wanted to get rid of Yulia, but honestly getting rid of those 2 was more of a higher priority for me. I went ahead and grabbed my Tensei Jessica. That way I now have a teleport. They start banning some of my tank and physical AoE. They grab Vargas as their tank. I went ahead and got rid of both Bernhardt and Elwyn. This also ensures that Vargas, the only buff that Vargas can get is from Gossipal or the 3C from Liana. And this leaves Yulia and TRS. I was fully expecting them to pick Yulia. I went and grabbed Gustav. I'm probably not the best with Gustav right now, but I do kind of like how she has like a lot of unique mechanics. So yeah, my opponent picked TRS. Honestly, I don't really understand it. I mean, I think Yulia would have been a better fit overall. I mean, I guess maybe they're concerned about just being able to keep up with the damage that's coming in. That's my only guess. But it doesn't really matter because Vargas can't block anything from Tensei Jessica. So, I don't know. In any case, I'll go ahead and grab Renee. Honestly, I think Varna would have been a better pick. But we'll see how this goes. Alright. So Sky Archers, Standard Kit Chancellor, Liana, 3C Enact again. Standard Kit Bozel with faction buff. Vargas. We don't see Vargas very often, so he's got 4 movements. He's got his 3C, which is takes all physical damage for adjacent. Gain Brawn after triggering Talents of Unflinching. Upon taking fatal damage, if there's at least 1 ally on the battlefield, restore 30% of max HP and max unit HP is reduced by 35%. And can trigger up to 2 times. So essentially, with this, if he has a self-res built into his kit, if it triggers and he has this 3C and there's at least 1 ally on the field, he gets 3 more self-reses, but every time he has less HP. So he becomes very, very resilient. And apparently he has access to giant zombies, which is a very decent tank. It is demon though. TRS, I was kind of expecting TRS to have 3C, but this one does not. Has Attack, Blessing, Miracle, and Mass Heal. The only person that would even benefit from the Attack Blessing would be Vargas. Because, yeah, Buzzle and Chancellor both have AoEs. Vargas does have Power Stab and does have Battle Cry, so he's definitely kind of an aggressive tank. Alright, nothing too special to point out here. Renee, I went with Shadow Spear for the single target, which is good against Holy, and then Calamity Throw and 3C for her AoEs. For those who don't know what Renee actually does, because no one sees her in combat, if she's entering battle with anyone that has a debuff, she actually gets increased intelligence, defense, and magic defense. And anytime she does damage to an enemy, at 6 stars, she inflicts 2 random debuffs. So she can actually pump out a lot of debuffs, especially with the Calamity Throw, which also does 2 debuffs. And then if you happen to have the Miracle Staff, that's potentially a 5th debuff. Unfortunately, she's very short-legged, and she's kind of got all the issues that Time Faction has, which is just not very much Time Faction support nowadays. Light of Genesis, I'm now using Fairy Spirit Prophets. I went ahead and brought Strength in just to have some additional buffing. I have been running into issues where my only buffer would be like Ironblood Commander here, and then once those wear off or she gets killed, I'm kind of just without any sort of attack buff. So see why I brought Mass Heal, just to deal with Bozel mostly, and then Gustav Standard Kit, single targets, 3C, and reset. Alright, so let's dive right in. So right off the bat, Blazing Dragon Soul. So his guard actually, that 3C guard actually gives him immune to cannot be healed, which is actually pretty good. Gets access to Power Stab, which means his defense gets applied to his attack, so he has 18-14 attack. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to apply to the giant zombie, so the giant zombie is not looking too great. Then, of course, chance reduces crit chance, and that's about it. Is that an aura? No, it is not. Alright, and then he has a special armor. When attacked by a ranged attack, new unit's normal attack range is increased by 1. It's nice. I mean, it works against at least general ranged attackers, but of course, nowadays you got things like Light of Genesis or people just using the ranged staff that extend their range to beyond 2, so it doesn't help against that at least. Anyway, so yeah, I went ahead and threw out the 3C buff onto Iron Chancellor. 3C buff gets applied to Vargas. When teleported Renee forward, or Reen. And then I shift back for Strengthen. This is mostly just to build up Light of Judgment. Got a Breeze proc from Bozel. Bozel did not faction buff, and I don't know why. Sometimes I wonder if like some of these things I'm fighting against are bots, but they're not. Because if it was an AI, they would actually move immediately, which this is on replay. Everything's immediate. But while I was fighting this guy, he did take time to think through his moves, supposedly. But yeah, for whatever reason, this Bozel did not faction buff. I'm guessing he misclicked. All right, so yeah, Gustav did his reset. Or her reset, its reset, and Gonna be doing my usual formation stuff. I didn't need to worry about getting Renee in the mass attack because I had already strengthened her. Miracle and some passive heals. Right. So I move in. I do Patter Matter. Yeah. So dispelled some buff. I have the silence accessory, or sorry, I have the accessory that can. There's a chance that it will remove a buff whenever doing damage. Pattern Matter hits in 3 straight lines, pushes back 1 space, and then reduces defense or magic defense, whichever is highest, by 30%. Unfortunately, a number of these characters were immune to those effects. Yeah, immune to all debuffs, and then the rest of them. Bozel usually has an accessory that will make it so he's immune to magic defense down, since that's his key stat. But I was mostly just doing it to do some extra damage, and then of course there's some debuffs I managed to apply as well. Yeah, right now he can't use passive skills, which means Seal can't actually proc, which is nice. Anyway, now he moves forward to go ahead and faction buff. So I move in. So I have physical troops, but Iron Chancellor herself is magic, so Vargas can't guard. And I triggered him. I had the 3C, so I got invest out of it, so I got some coins. I think I got 2 for it. So, pretty nasty AoE. But that's it. She won't be able to AoE again for at least 1 turn. So I had 4 range. Went ahead and used my time attack. Get the kill there. Attack Blessing on Vargas. So Vargas is doing like plus 45% damage or something ridiculous right now. So teleported down. Yeah, this is 40,000 damage. Wow. Yeah, Vargas can be a beast. The problem with Vargas, of course, is while he has insane defense and the attack conversion, his magic defense is completely non-existent. So one thing I guess I want to talk about, I'm obviously got reasonable control of the match right now, but some of the issues I've been running into with my setup, I've been having some issues with my band pick as well, but my setup with Iron Chancellor is I can only buff 3 people at a time, including herself, with that mobility buff, which tends to make it so a lot of the units that are slow that don't have that buff end up falling behind. And also I've been very defensive with my healers, where I try to keep them away from the action, and that makes it very difficult for me to actually move in and use business strategy, which only has I think a 3 or 4 range. And so it ends up in a situation where I'm only using a fraction of my team while rushing against their full team, and that tends to go really, really bad unless I get kills really early. So yeah, Desperate Measures. Get that buff active. Get Lancer up. And have him guard. So yeah, here comes the act again. Okay. So Thorns procced. Yeah, 50. Yeah, I had advantage against him since I had advantage against everything but Holy with the 3C. So procced his thing. So now he has less max HP, but he can res 2 more times as long as there's allies on the field. And I don't know, how much HP does he have? Well, we'll get to see it more. So, he got his act again, so he's going to move in with Attack Blessing. That poor man. Got refunded a coin. Go ahead and do Calamity Throw at this point. I actually managed to dispel whatever that 3C buff was. Not that it mattered, I didn't have much longer. But you kind of see the issue right now. Vargas is actually a danger. I killed all their DPS, but Vargas is just steamrolling right now. So I do a normal attack at 4 range because everything is on cooldown, and kill her. I was tempted to do an AoE, but I didn't want to keep a second healer alive. Calamity Throw again, because I clocked earlier. Holy troops versus, or holy hero and troops versus demon troops made it pretty easy to punch through. Alright. Okay, yeah, his HP is dropping. But he has so much HP that the percentage is actually still pretty effective. But yeah, the fact that Vargas was a threat in this match made me kind of reconsider what my box is. Because if Vargas is beating up on me, I'm doing something wrong at some point. So, it's gonna heal up there. I'll go ahead and do Disillusionment to time at this point. Manage to silence their Liana. I'll do Power Stab. Yeah, barely survived it, even with the damage reduction shield. Yep. And there you go, punch through all of the self-reses here. This is probably the most you'll ever see of Vargas in this match here. Yeah, you can see, yeah. It's funny, even with all the percentage reductions from all the self-resing, he still has as much HP as some of my casters. Also, one thing you might have saw trigger besides the 3C, reducing his cooldown or increasing his cooldowns, is any enemy that actually does damage to Gustav, there's an 80% chance that they'll have their cooldown timer increased as well. Let's see, increases cooldown time, yeah, or increases a random skill by 1. So that actually procced as well. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and finish up with you. At this point, my opponent literally has nothing. But fights to the end. Did their 20 damage. So yeah, that was a mess. That Vargas took tons of damage. But yeah, I mean, I had a reasonably strong start. I managed to get some really early kills. But once that Vargas got in range, he kind of just started stomping through. And since I had no tank, the only thing I can really do was try to hold him off while the rest of my characters got healed up with passive healing or something. Or let cooldowns reset. So yeah, a bit messy to say the least. So with that in mind, this match against Gwendy, you might know some things. Some changes have been made. So, key things. I replaced... Who did I replace exactly? I definitely replaced... I replaced Sissy White, I replaced Renee, and I replaced Maya. I replaced Maya with Akaya, or Aka. I replaced Renee... Oh wait, no, I replaced... Who did I say I replaced? I replaced Maya... Renee, Sissy White. Oh, and I replaced Shafaniel. She's just not She's not working. Let's just put it that way. She's short-legged, and if I have to bring her faction buff, she only has literally 1 AoE skill, and she doesn't really have much defensively. She does really good damage, and she definitely can dispel a lot of buffs, but her 3C really is only most effective when she actually can get kills with it, because then that resets the cooldown fully, and has to hit multiple targets. So I got rid of her. Maya, of course, I didn't really got any opportunities to use her, and I was mostly taking her because I was concerned about getting, AoE'd myself and being overwhelmed by debuffs. But that's not been happening lately, now that I've been a lot more aggressive and bringing my own AoEs. So I got rid of her. Renee is decent, but in the end, she just doesn't keep up with other AoE characters. I do like the fact she can pump out a lot of debuffs, but since a lot of characters bring both Rosenseal and Liana, usually if I ban that Rosenseal, they're going to bring Liana, or they'll bring Elma if they happen to have her, in which case that kind of just shuts down Renee's biggest benefit. And then I got rid of Sissy White because she wasn't really keeping up with the team, and also I'm at the point where I had 2 tanks and 3 healers, and that kind of sometimes put me in an awkward place on some of the ban picks. So now I'm literally just 2 tanks and 2 healers. If they ban my Rosenseal, I just take Lycoris. If they don't ban Lycoris, I grab Rosenseal, and that's just what I do now. There's no point in me having other healers because I don't need to bring them. So that's why I did it. And as for what I replaced them with, I have Akaya, Helena, Angelina, and I brought Sherry. So Akaya isn't just another enabler. A lot of people tend to be very fearful of Akaya because she can give 2 mobility to anybody and give plus 30% to attack and intelligence. So it's just another person I can rely on besides just Iron Chancellor. Angelina has access to AoEs in a way to kind of mess with formations, and she can hit and run. Well, the other thing is she's 5 movement, and she can hit and run if she hits enough targets. So that alone just makes her a lot more reliable than a Shafaniel or a Renee. Helena is technically not a full-fledged AoE, but she puts a lot of pressure on the opponent, and she can throw out a lot of debuffs. And if my opponent doesn't have tanks, like if I ban their tanks like I've been doing, Helena becomes very, very dangerous. I've experienced firsthand what happens when a Helena is on the field when I don't have my own tank. And even if I had my own tank, once she's in there and dumping all those crystals everywhere, it becomes very, very dangerous. And Sherry is more or less just to kind of help put more pressure on my opponent as far as mobility. Because again, if my opponent doesn't have tanks, Sherry becomes all the more dangerous. And if my opponent is seeing characters like Sherry and Helena as more dangerous than some of the characters I have been picking, that means they'll be banning them first, and I get to pick the characters I want to pick. So that's kind of the gist of it. Sorry if I was stumbling on my words there. So right off the bat, my opponent just banned Akaya. I was like, perfect. They take Florentia, ban the Rosenseal. Oh, I guess I didn't really go over the box. Their box anyway. So they have a Bernhardt. It seems to be almost like an Empire Princess box. They do have Bozel and Kyura. They do have Juggler as well. Pretty decent mix. I went ahead and banned their Hilda and their Ares, because Ares is someone that actually terrifies me. He's not as dangerous anymore since I tend to get Rosenseal often, but if my opponent had picked Rosenseal as the ban, Ares would have been a lot more dangerous because he just does so much damage with his stupid AoE nonsense. So I take Rosenseal here. At this point, if my opponent wants an actual magic tank, they have to take one now, which they do. They take Christiane. They went ahead and banned my long range and AoE. At this point, since they picked Christiane, I started banning Princess specifically. Got rid of both Cherry and their long-range Lycoris. Or not Lycoris, Lucretia. I grabbed Iron Chancellor, who honestly is kind of my go-to. They go ahead and ban my Sherry and Angelina, so already they're pulling their weight and being banned first. They grab Kyura. At this point, I got rid of Helena and their Tensei Jessica. And at this point, I mentioned in previous videos I've been trying to be less reliant on tanks, but looking at my opponent's box at this point, I was just like, I might as well just bring a tank. I mean, they're going to come in with a bunch of heavy hitters. I was assuming that this Elwyn was SP, which means was high mobility Cav. And then of course there's the Bozel, or not the Bozel, but the Juggler and the Bernhardt that I was concerned about. So I was like, you know what? Let's just take a tank, and it kind of worked out. So they go ahead and ban my Tensei Jessica and my Lycoris at this point. They grab their Bernhardt. So I went ahead and got rid of Juggler and Bozel. I wasn't as I shouldn't really have been as worried about the AoE from Juggler anymore since I have Rosenseal, but I still didn't want to deal with any of that shenanigans. So that left pretty much Elwyn and Liana, and I was going to assume my opponent was just going to pick Elwyn. Grabbed Varna. I wasn't sure what this Christian was going to have, but if that Christian happened to go with angels as their troops, I can do extra damage with the arrow AoEs that Varna has. Alright, Helena and Michelle got banned, so that leaves me with Gustav and Estelle. And they grab Elwyn, no surprise there. And I'm gonna grab Gustav. This actually worked out really well. During this band pick, I actually pulled up Langrisser to look up factions. I have the Empire faction buff from Rosenseal and the Reincarnation faction buff from Hilda here. So that means I actually have full buff coverage. Gustav gets Reincarnation. Rosenseal, Hilda, and Gustav have Reincarnation buff. And then Iron Chancellor, pretty much everyone but Gustav has Empire as well. I believe that's the case. Yeah, that is the case. So with them together, I actually had full buff coverage. And my opponent's only healer is Florentia, who's not the best when it comes to dealing with dispelling mass AoE type stuff. So yeah, Overlord Ambition. So yeah, like I mentioned before, I didn't know this Elwyn was going to be infantry, which makes him a bit more dangerous because obviously Hilda is mostly spears. But it did actually limit his mobility a little bit, so that kind of worked out a little bit in my favor. So right now his range is 1, 2, 3, 4 to there. Florentia can do an act again if necessary. Another key thing to note is Kyura has no buffs, so her assassination capability is not the best. She does have really good intelligence, and her sorceress is actually packed quite a punch at full HP. So I still need to be very careful about it. But for the most part, the big danger is going to be the Elwyn. Bernhardt can hit pretty hard, but I'm not really afraid of anything like as far as the sword dance is concerned because I have Rosenseal here. Speaking of Rosenseal, I dropped Miracle and replaced her faction buff. For Iron Blood Commander, I dropped her Mass Attack and brought Commander's Ferocity instead. For those who don't know what that does, it's 2 range, and if she happens to be in an attack formation, she ignores 30% defense or M defense. Or actually, it does both. And then if this unit has, if they were in a defense stance, they instead will heal and reduce the cooldown of the skill by 1, so that she can do it more often. Varna, I also dropped her Mass Attack, instead brought 1,000 Arrows, so she has access to both Arrow Rain and 1,000 Arrows. And with Aim, she essentially can go Arrow Rain, 1,000 Arrows, Aim, and then just keep going in that cycle over and over again. So she'll just be able to steadily pump arrows into these people, do some damage, and more importantly, dispel buffs. 1,000 Arrows will dispel 1 buff, Arrow Rain will dispel 2, and make them more vulnerable to more AoE. No changes to Gustav, and then Hilda is pretty much the same. Alright. So there you go, Reincarnation faction buff active. Kind of taking a position that's a little bit away from everybody else. Oh yeah, I didn't actually go over hers. Christiane brought Phalanxes, brought Fallen Petals. What didn't she take? Yeah, she didn't take her general aura instead. She took Fallen Petals. Okay, that's fine. Elwyn's pretty standard. Eternal Glow, Reign of Glory. It's just he happens to be his infantry class. Full attack Kyura. Florentia brought Strategic Regroup, Resounding Might, and Heal, which is pretty normal, I think. I don't remember what my Florentia usually brings. Oh, right, she usually brings the 1-cost skill that does passive get formation points for kills. Okay, completely makes sense. So yeah, Gustav's gonna move up, do reset, mainly just to get her extra range active. So just to kind of put it in perspective, her range is right now up to here. Her AoEs can go 1 additional space, so she's got this border here going on here. Alright, so I went ahead and moved in. Varna is providing strong support, so now everyone gets plus 20% AoE damage. which is pretty helpful. And then I went ahead and moved in Imperial Radiance. This will buff them, as well as get them the fancy little stacks. Alright. So battle support, I don't know why. Oh, I know why. So battle support does actually give you plus troop attack. So the sorcerers have even more attack now. So that was essentially her attack buff. So setting up formation. And I also procced Breeze and Tenyu Breeze. So everyone right now has at least 5 movement. So there you go. 21,000 damage. I'm going to rewind real quick. I think she has the range staff, which means she didn't have plus intelligence. Oops, sorry. Didn't go far enough back. Nope, she doesn't. She doesn't have the range staff. So that's probably why her intelligence is pretty decent. So yeah, pretty good damage, but not enough to kill. I did have Last Rites, which probably is why she's still alive. At this point, I went ahead and just did Arrow Rain. So it hits everybody, dispels 2 buffs, and makes them all more vulnerable to AoE. Her exclusive makes it so her first AoE has expanded range, and then it goes on cooldown for 4 turns. I was a bit concerned about doing that because I was worried about the follow-up of Bernhardt running in and doing his AoE, but the passive heal, thanks to Rosenseal, ensured that she'll stay topped up, mostly topped off. Alright, full bloom. At this point, I shift forward. I switched to Cav for obvious reasons. Sword Dance. So yeah, that did about 5,000. Anytime that you take AoE damage, it gets halved between your troops and yourself. So even though it looked like it did about 10,000 damage, it got split between Gargoyles and Varna. Alright, which is fine by me. Also, I guess one thing to point out is I did dispel his attack buff, which is why he did less damage. There's a pretty good chance that he would have actually gotten kill otherwise. Besides that... Oh, I guess another thing to note about Kyura's attack. She had that soldier buff earlier, but that actually got dispelled the moment she attacked Varna because of the faction buff will make it so it dispels buffs from enemies that attack her. So that worked out. I have not gotten rid of the guard buff yet. And it looks like Ellen lost his faction buff, but everything else is still good to go. And it looks like Florentia lost all of her defense buffs. Okay, cool. So at this point I move in, do Iron Blood Glory. Spear troops versus infantry. Christian's pretty resistant against magic, so... But it does really good damage. Strategic Group is not going to heal enough. Sudden Strike. Now the other thing I did, since I did the 3C and I was in attack stance, I did dispel 5 buffs. And out of those 5 buffs, I got rid of her guard range. So right now, Bernhardt is not guarded. And he has 4 cooldown. So that means I do an additional 20% damage, and I strike first. Oh yeah, more than enough. He had around 25,000, I did 40,000. And I got a cooldown reduction, nice. Anytime she does a damage skill, she has a 80% chance to reduce the cooldown. Same for anyone that happens to be near her. Alright, time to get whacked by this. Eternal Glow. So, Spear troops, but Cav class, so reduce the damage a little bit. And And then I go ahead and do Mass Crystal Healing. Alright, another attack. So at this point I don't have my guard buff. I got 10 buffs dispelled at this point. 60,000 damage about. So 1 kill, got the self-res. He heals back to full. I'm completely fine going outside guard range for this. So do this, and I ignore 30% defense and M defense. So yeah, more than enough to kill. What was it, 31,000 damage? Yeah, so anytime there's anyone, I think it's within 3. After being attacked... Oh, within 2 blocks. Anyone within 2 blocks of Gustav has an 80% chance of reducing the cooldown of the skill they activated by 1, if it's a damage skill. So instead of being 2 turns, it's now down to 1. Let's take a quick... I just want to see how much HP he had. Yeah, he had 21,000, I did 30,000, so that's more than enough. Oop. Alright. Magic Eye. So Magic Eye procced, but I have Crystal Barrier to soak the debuff. And the reason why I was okay with moving outside of guard range is Kyra is just... she doesn't have any buffs. She just can't do the damage. She's not at full HP anymore. Well, actually, the troops are at full HP, so actually the sorceresses do get the benefit. But yeah, at this point, she's used both for cooldowns. I can now safely heal up. So, full bloom, which just heals me more. Also, that passive. So first, obviously this stuff. Dispel more buffs, do some fixed damage. So the passive from the full bloom here, not only did it trigger the crystal healing passive, but it also triggered Gustav's cooldown reduction, or increasing. So that's actually kind of interesting. So a random skill got an increased cooldown for that. Alright, in any case, I did, was it Arrow Rain? No, sorry, 1,000 arrows. So we did 1,000 arrows, did some pretty decent damage. Of course, Kyra kind of heals up some of it, but Florentia is now almost at half HP, at least for her base HP. And then I increase fixed AoE damage. Get hit with Resounding Might. I get a random debuff, but again, Crystal Barrier. She did proc clock there. I was actually thinking of doing Gustav's 3C first to prevent the clock from happening, because I assumed Florentia was going to have clock. But I wanted to go ahead and just do Varna first to dispel more buffs, just to keep everyone vulnerable. So just a little bit of time. It's going to do... What was that damage? There were so many numbers, I actually could not see the damage that was done to Florentia there. So just to put in perspective, Florentia has 6190. So I have to do at least 12,380 damage as an AoE to actually kill her. Obviously the priest would, the troops would live, but it doesn't matter if the leader dies. So what was that? How much? I do have plus 20% AoE damage, and I think they're vulnerable to AoE at the moment. Yeah, I can't even see the damage. That's crazy. I'm just kind of seeing what else is here. Yeah, and now they can't proc clock down if it matters. But wow, that was crazy. And at this point, my opponent gives up. So yeah, that was my first time using that changed up box. I definitely kind of like how it was playing out. I did go on a losing streak prior to the previous battle. I think I lost 3 battles in a row. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I lost 3 battles in a row. And coming out of the placement matches, I was at exactly 1500. So I went down a rank, and then I lost points in that rank. So these wins I just did are essentially just get me back to Silver 1. Overall, though, well, I'm back to a 50% win rate. Overall, I do think these changes are better. having more high mobility characters. Essentially, the idea is to have, either Rosenseal or Lycoris as my first pick. Grab Iron Chancellor, and then from there, grab at least 1 or 2 low mobility characters, and then 1 high mobility character. And with how the box is set up now, I think I can do that. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 high mobility characters. So unless they focus purely on taking them out first, I should be, even if they did, I should still be able to get a pick, one of these picks at some point. And Varna's actually been doing rather well. I do like how she can kind of just persistently, she can do a hit and run, which can be very useful if you happen to have a tank nearby. And even if you didn't have a tank, it's a way of kind of getting out of range if necessary. So again, just having high mobility and providing that additional threat is pretty useful here. Anyway, sorry for the usual rambling nonsense. I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. I'm at Silver 1, which I'm kind of content with. I don't really care about the skin for this one, but I will probably try for Gold 3 next week. For right now, I'm gonna call it. So I'm the Depressed Dealer. This was Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 10. I'll see you guys later.